You know that hollow moment when someone tells you, "We all agreed you're not welcome?" My mom said that to my face over the phone. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I hit one button and the house they lived in went dark on Christmas Eve. Here's how I did it, and why it felt like the calmest, cleanest revenge you'll ever hear. If you've ever been erased by the people who were supposed to protect you, hit like and subscribe, because this one's for anyone who's ever paid for a place they weren't allowed to belong to. Drop a 1 in the comments if you've ever been sidelined by family. I read every single message. I'll start this where the world felt smallest. My kitchen apartment, December morning, phone face down on the counter, the inbox empty where it should have been noisy with plans. It's funny how absence announces itself. Not with thunder but with a missing ping. No group text about who's bringing what. No passive-aggressive spreadsheet from Carlin ranking casseroles. Nothing. At first I told myself it was a lag and oversight. We all forget sometimes. But there's a particular quiet that's deliberate, and that's the quiet that sits in your bones and makes your hands go cold. I didn't check social media until later. I didn't need to. The silence was heavy enough. But when I finally did, the lack of my name wasn't an accident, it was curated. The shared family drive we kept for playlists and gift lists was gone. The group chat was pruned. My name removed like someone had taken scissors to a page. That afternoon, my mom left a voicemail I still hear in my head like a recording on loop. We all agreed. You're not welcome at Christmas. Listen to how casual she is in my mind. Her voice flat, almost rehearsed. No pause. No guilt. The words land like a verdict. Not an argument. Not a plea. A decision. When someone you love treats you like a function, a recurring payment, a utility, you feel the smallness before you can name it. I didn't cry. I sat on my couch, the grocery bag still looped around my wrist, and felt a glass inside me fracture into bright surgical pieces. You can read a line like that and think, why didn't she fight? But this wasn't about theatrics. I tried being visible for years. I showed up late one holiday, arms full of gifts and cookies hot from the oven, and was handed a paper plate like an afterthought. I kept the house warm, I fixed the faucets, I refinished the sunroom. Their parties happened where I'd paid. I was background labor to their front-of-house smiles. By the time the voicemail came, whatever fight I might have used had already been exhausted on apologies and explanations that never landed. So I did something maintenance does best. I objected where I'd been invisible. I opened a spreadsheet. Not to document hurt for sympathy, to assemble receipts. Mortgage payments December line. $1,368. Paid. Monthly. For 3 years. Furnace repairs. Utility bills. Oven repair. Down payment assistance notarized in 2019. I'd been meticulous with the ledger because that's how I live. Quietly precise. Not vindictive, just clear. That clarity is different from vengeance. Clarity doesn't shout. It arranges facts like a neat stack of plates. You can either use them as dinnerware or as evidence. I arranged them. Carlin texted me that night. You always made things tense. It's better this way. Casual cruelty delivered like a status update. I screenshot everything and saved it in a folder I labeled exit plan. I thought, let's see what they do when the thing they treat as natural, my help, my money, stops being free. 2 days later, I paused the mortgage autopay with one click. Let me tell you something small and dangerous. When someone has come to rely on you without acknowledging you, the smallest withdrawal becomes seismic. The payment sat in my account, comfortable and idle, like a bridge nobody thought could be unscheduled. That click was not a slap. It was a reassignment of responsibility. Then I methodically canceled utilities. Electricity, gas, internet, homeowners insurance, accounts that had been in my name for years because at the time I thought I was helping. My mother had said, just until you're 60, like favors come with sunset clauses. They didn't. I closed each account and saved confirmation emails. I forwarded the cancellations to an alternate inbox. No rant. No drama. Just documentation and the quiet, efficient sound of a system shutting down. Christmas Eve arrived with a message thread buzzing in my silent phone. Power just went out mid-potluck. Mom's freaking out. Imagine the absurdity. The family around the table I bought the chairs for. Candles guttering in the kitchen I refinished. They called each other frantic, searching for the obvious. On the other end they had one voice that should have had an answer, mine. Instead the lights were down. Their polite scramble is still vivid to me. The plastic clatter of flashlights, anxious whispers, and the trying on grief of someone who finally realizes the scaffolding under their warm life has been removed. And yet, and this matters, I felt no triumph like a hatchet moment. There was no gleeful revenge dance. I made a plan that was surgical and then I lived my life. On the morning the house went dark, I made soup. I wrapped a gift for my neighbor's daughter. I sat on my couch and let the dark sit with me. The anger perhaps would have been louder had I sought spectacle. But what I wanted was something else. To stop being the invisible utility they took for granted. People ask if I expected a call. No. If they could erase me digitally, they could avoid the hard question of their conscience. They preferred silence because silence is easier to pretend as nothingness. It's less messy than accountability. But their convenience had been built on the unacknowledged currency of my labor. I simply withdrew the coin. The payoff wasn't a headline. It was the domestic scramble when they realized the heat wouldn't be paid. The lights wouldn't come back on without someone signing checks, and the homeowner's insurance cancellation might matter if something broke. That same week an anonymous package I'd sent to a local paper landed in Dolores' mailbox. A packet of PDF receipts, recorded payments, and a clean, unemotional cover note addressed to the family and a few organizations they dealt with. I didn't shout my name in the subject line. I didn't need to. The numbers spoke loud enough. Then Tamsin, bless her, messaged me an audio clip she'd recorded at a family gathering. Laughter. Carlin. She's cold. Everything she does feels calculated. Dolores. She's convenient. Byron. Keep her name on the papers. No need to rock the boat. The laughter after the words felt like salt. It's one thing to be excluded. It's another to hear the public demolition of your humanity in clipped, cozy tones. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't always come with a dramatic knife. Sometimes it's a dessert fork of a sentence, small and precise. I uploaded the recording to an anonymous drive and assembled the packets. Mortgage ledger, repair receipts, emails, and the audio clip. I sent them to a handful of people who couldn't easily fold the narrative into the family story. A bank officer, the director of the charity Dolores had been photographed hosting, a journalist contact who'd covered small-town charity events. No flourish. Just facts and an invitation to ask questions. That evening the charity webpage updated. Dolores was no longer listed as the host. Byron had to take a leave at his bank while HR looked into the language Tamsin captured. The family scrambled. The kinds of people who rewrite memory to their advantage don't love messy public truth. They like tidy curated stories. Facts are scratchy on their neat veneers. When Carlin screamed at me, "You're destroying everything Mom built," I felt the old reflex to apologize like a reflexive cough. But I didn't. I only laughed that low, disbelieving laugh that's equal parts sorrow and a sharpened edge. Destroying? No. I'd simply refused to be the unpaid pillar propping up someone else's facade. If that collapse looked dramatic to them, that's because they'd never bothered to build in accountability. The bank trip to transfer my name off the mortgage felt anticlimactic in the best way. There's power in paperwork. I walked into the bank with a red-marked folder. Mortgage transfer, notarized forms, exit documentation. The woman behind the glass smiled like she'd been paid to be hospitable at 9 in the morning. She asked the usual questions. I answered without flourish. "You understand you're giving up all rights to the property?" she asked. "I understand," I said. Precise. Final. The signature felt like cutting a cord. There were smaller, quieter aftermaths that were somehow louder than any press release. Norma Fisk, an old neighbor who'd always known, somehow when truth sat on the doorstep, handed me a plate of cookies and told me I'd always been the strong one. Not surprising, but sanctioned by someone who had nothing to gain from saying it out loud. Tamsin started visiting more. Stuff arrived in my mailbox that month that felt like small, honest gifts instead of performative thank yous. My grandmother asked after me with the soft guilt of someone realizing she'd let something beautiful fray and chosen the warmth of denial instead. I kept the torn pieces of greeting cards and photos I'd once stored as proof of belonging. I didn't burn them. I threw them away, because the past had been edited with cheap glitter and smiling faces that rearranged ordinary contributions into collective we-s. I didn't want the weight of pretending anymore. The deletion of my name from the holiday caption 3 years ago stung not because I wanted applause but because they'd adopted my work as a group effort and kept the credit. Here's what I'd learned. The most satisfying revenge isn't a scream. It's not a viral video. It's a steady administrative reclaiming of your life and boundaries. It's the quiet dignity of walking out of a system that demands you prove your worth, and then punishes you when you stop. I was tired of explaining. I was tired of the hope that one more casserole, one more midnight shipping run, one more unacknowledged repair would change how they saw me. But don't let me dress this up as triumph without nuance. There's loss. Leaving something you helped build, especially when memory and money commingle, is complicated. There were nights I stood in my kitchen and felt a hollow ache where the hope of acceptance used to live. There were small moments of pang when I looked at my snow-dusted window, and somebody else's laugh echoed in a photo caption. There were also mornings I woke up without the knot of pretending in my throat. That knot had to be cut. People often ask, wouldn't it have been better to confront them? I did many times. Conversations, gentle corrections, receipts handed over at holiday tables. I tried those. Most people prefer narratives that let them remain comfortable. Conscience is an energy expense, silence is free. If you try to make someone feel terrible for their behavior, they'll often double down, reframe, and gaslight. I wanted a remedy that didn't rely on forcing their insight. I wanted a remedy that relied on facts. So I sent facts. I stepped away. And the quietest, most private piece of justice came like this. A certified letter to the house where my money had kept their life warm. It sat in their mailbox like a small cold sun. Notice of transfer of responsibility. Carlin opened it, read it aloud, and the room did what rooms do when the obvious sits in their laps. Dolores said nothing. There was nowhere to redirect blame. For once, there was no scapegoat left whose name could be called to absolve lazy conscience. I didn't dance on the ruins. I baked real bacon and eggs the morning after and read a book I'd wanted to finish. I lit a candle not to freeze the memory of them but as an affirmation I could make light in my own space. Forgiveness was not the immediate assignment. I wasn't trying to punish so much as preserve my dignity, my finances, my mental space. That preservation felt like a soft, sturdy thing. It felt like coming home to myself. Weeks later, there were tentative outreach messages. I know I hurt you written on embossed cardstock. Formal apologies that read like drafts. I kept the card in a drawer, folded and quiet. I didn't respond right away. If they wanted me back on their terms, on which I had been the invisible provider, the renegotiation would be hard, and it should be. They had to reckon with the fact they didn't just forget me. They deliberately made the choice not to see me. People on the outside love to simplify it. You attacked Christmas. But I didn't attack the holiday. I dissolved a system of expectation that had been bleeding me dry. Theirs was an ecosystem that rewarded silence, and I changed one variable. I stopped making free the thing someone else had assumed would be free forever. Here's the part of the story I want everyone to feel. The revenge wasn't theatrical. It is not a movie where the villain gets a dramatic comeuppance and we all high-five. It is slow and administrative and, in its way, cleaner. The whole arc felt like pulling the plug on a drowning machine. The guilt they felt was private and deserved. And the relief I felt was private and deserved as well. And now when someone asks, was it worth it? I answer without a flourish, yes. For the simplest of reasons, I stopped paying for a life I wasn't allowed to be part of. I stopped performing gratitude for a family that had voted me off the island. I didn't ruin them. I removed the scaffolding I'd supplied. They had to take over the cost. They had to own it. That was the kind of justice that didn't humiliate me into a grievance. It required them to face their choices. So if you're watching this and you've been the one propping up someone's life with invisible labor, emotional, financial, logistical, and you're tired of being erased, hear me clearly. You don't owe martyrdom to people who treat you like a utility. You don't have to prove yourself into belonging. There is dignity in walking away and making the absence teach them what your presence did all along. The climax of this whole thing wasn't a shouting match. It was an ordinary morning when a certified letter sat on a doormat and a family had to read the news aloud. You now carry the weight you claimed was yours. The bravado the house hosted vanished into practical panic. Tax forms, utilities, and insurance now belonged to the people who'd been building memories in a kitchen that I'd paid for. The recognition arrived not as applause, but as responsibility. And if responsibility is a teacher, it taught them the cost of forgetting. My release didn't come from their faces. It came from the tilt of my shoulders after the signatures were filed. When the ledger matched the truth, and I no longer had to maintain the invisible infrastructure. That is a quiet, satisfying victory. If someone you relied on erased you, you don't have to wage war. You can reclaim yourself with something quieter and more enduring. Documentation, boundaries, and the courage to stop subsidizing a life that rejects you. It's not about spite. It's about fairness. Have you ever had to walk away from a family, friend group, or community that made you feel small? Drop your story in the comments. I read everything. If this resonated, hit like and subscribe. There are more stories like this ahead. Raw, honest, and strangely comforting. If this one landed, type 1 in the chat so I know you're here.